Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tech Educator Podcast, your home for professional development. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome. Tonight's show, we're going to be talking all about coding in the social studies classroom. Can you code in the social studies classroom? Can you really combine STEM education and the humanities together? Tonight, we're going to be arguing that conversation and figuring out exactly what we can do. We've got some great guests on. But first, I want to share a big announcement that happened today. I don't know if you guys heard the sonic boom, but the Edu triplets turned 4 years old today. It was certainly a big event at our house, and I'm saying this at the top of the show only because we're about ready to go down to Atlantic City for the Teachers Convention where they were born. And I want to say it out there one more time to everybody listening. Thank you so much for the support. They're doing amazing. 4 years old. I couldn't believe it tonight. But I want to bring on our co-host for tonight, Mr. Sam Patterson. Sam, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, but I can't believe it's been 4 years.
It has been 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And 4 years. But how are you?
I'm great. Beautiful day here in sunny Southern California.
Excellent. I'm sure just like here, it was about 30 degrees, right?
If you by 30 mean 75, yes, that's exactly what it was like here.
Excellent. Now, tonight you're going to be talking to us a little bit about coding as we, of course, prepare for the hour of code coming up.
I'm really going to be talking about learning, Jeff.
No.
I think
We're coding. We're talking about coding tonight.
Well, I mean, that's one of the tools we use to learn, right? I think sometimes people get really stressed out about this idea of coding. And when we talk about coding in the social studies classroom, they think we're going to have VR machines strapped to the kids' faces and their hands tied to keyboards. But it's not like that.
Let's bring in an administrator here. Rob, how are you today? How are things up in Connecticut?
Cold. Just like in New Jersey.
You say code? You're coding up in Connecticut?
Yeah, the hour of code.
The hour of cold.
It's been more than an hour. Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing these days?
Just been busy. Just went to Relay Principal Fellowship Program. I was there in New York City for a few days. Great 3 days of learning. A lot going on. And I am a former social studies teacher, so I'm excited for tonight's show.
That is absolutely perfect. Now, Rob, I'm sure that you were coding constantly in your classroom. Talk to us a little bit about some of the coding things that you were doing, because tonight we're talking all about coding.
Oh, we did the hour of code.
You did? Good. See, Sam, I told you, you can bring coding into social studies only for an hour a year, though.
Right. Well, as long as you get the hour of code, and then you turn the heat on.
What type of socials? What were you teaching, Rob?
Taught American history, 8th grade American history, 7th grade world geography and cultures.
Nice. Sam, is it possible to bring STEM education into a classroom like Rob's?
Sure, you can, even bring an elephant indoors. But the question is it appropriate? Right?
Hey, Sam, is it appropriate to bring coding into a social studies classroom?
It really, really is. You know why? Because kids care about coding. And in a lot of ways, programming, especially when done with a platform like Scratch, is really just another opportunity to give kids an opportunity to do stuff with the information you're giving them.
How does that work?
Well, I thought that we could spend today's show talking about a couple different actual programs that I've seen in Scratch and how they relate to assignments I know teachers give.
Well, let's take a look at that. We've had Scratch on the show a few times, actually, this calendar year, in fact. We've done a lot of stuff. Sam, move to your left a little bit. Now, one of the things about Scratch is it's a pretty robust but simple programming language.
Right. Scratch is a block-based programming language, and if you're a teacher and you've never used Scratch and you work with students 2nd grade or above, go ahead and hit pause on this, even Jeff would say don't do it. Subscribe to the show first, and then set up a Scratch account, because it's a really simple platform that allows students to create animations, videos, games, and interactive displays.
And the cost on that would be?
Nothing dollars and nothing cents.
That is pretty awesome. Now, when we're looking at this, there's a few different things that we're going to bring up today. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually show you guys how to demonstrate this, right? Because a lot of times teachers are wanting to put resources together. So stick around for the end of the show. We've got a great free Chrome extension that we're going to be talking about of how teachers can build a Scratch program, or what is the actual term? Is it Scratch pro? What do teachers build?
It is write a program in Scratch.
So how teachers can write a program in Scratch and then record themselves to flip your coding classroom. Now, Sam, the first thing that you were talking about is how to create interactive timelines. Rob, you did a lot with timelines, didn't you?
Did, absolutely.
And have you ever thought about building a timeline in a coding program?
No.
Sam, is this easy to do?
It's so easy to do that when you look at it, you initially think, that's kind of like a simple web page or kind of like a slideshow. Basically, in Scratch, the students can set up different screens and backgrounds. And this interactive timeline I found by putting the word timeline into the search bar at the Scratch website. The Scratch website is scratch.mit.edu because Scratch is developed by the good folks at MIT. So when you go to the Scratch website and you search for timeline, you can find a bunch of different examples because you're not going to be the first teacher to use Scratch in a social studies classroom. And I think that's probably the most important thing for people to realize, that if you've never looked at Scratch, the most important reason to look at Scratch is because a bunch of other teachers have already scratched all this stuff up. And there's a bunch of programs on Scratch already made by teachers and kids. With this one, you go to the program and it says it's made for social studies class and couldn't figure out how to put it on a disk. Hope it can work this way. So in the notes, the user, whose name is Mazgaria, just kind of put what description they felt made sense. When I click on the green flag to start it, it changes to a very patriotic image of an eagle looking kind of angry over a flag, and then goes to a timeline of the American Revolution that spans from March 5th, 1770 to the Treaty of Paris in 1783. There are maybe 18 different spots on this timeline, and when I click on December 25th, 1776, crossing the Delaware, a paragraph pops up that looks like it's maybe 200 to 300 words about crossing the Delaware. So we can quickly see that this program is the heft of a short report of information on the events of the American Revolution, with all of the events set up in relation to each other on a timeline. So it actually demonstrates their understanding of these events and when they happened in relationship to each other.
So, Sam, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How is using Scratch for a timeline different than, say, using a program like Capsules? Capsules it's a timeline creator. It's free. You can go in. They're pretty similar, correct?
I'm sure they are, right? Like, this is just one of the many things you can do with Scratch, but there's also a lot of different ways that this could be created inside of Scratch. One of the things I really like about Scratch is the open-endedness of the platform. There aren't templates, which can be kind of a double-edged sword at points, but you can use other people's programs as a starting point. So I'm thinking from a teacher's lens, one of the things that could be really cool is that you think of a traditional timeline across the page that has different bullets, but if you could actually make it where kids could be creating their own timelines. Now, it might take a little bit longer, but could you imagine the creativity that you'd be adding for students to build and create a timeline that works best for them? Right. And that's the thing, is there's so much choice in this platform and the students can customize it so much that it's not just like there's a limited number of choices that you can make. You can make a timeline in Google Docs, right? We could do a whole show called Making Timelines in Google Docs. It'd be like 8.5 minutes long. There'd be 25 different ways to do it. But you'd spend most of the time arguing with the kids about what fonts they should be using. because there are actually so few choices in Google Docs that the ones they can make, they end up making ludicrous choices with because there's so few choices to make. So, you know, just like the 4 themes in iMovie, they always pick the one that annoys me the most because there just aren't that many to choose from. So the number of choices inside of Scratch, though, is almost infinite. It's whatever they can really conceive of or imagine, and they can put these switches wherever. It really reminds me of the programming I first did creating web pages, where I was building, you know, very simple HTML-based web pages. But looking at this through the lens of a literacy teacher, I see a 5,000 to 7,000 word interactive display that they've created. And, you know, the only way those words are getting in there is they're typing them in. They're not copying and pasting this from somewhere. They had to, you know, actually come up with that. As long as you create the assignment in such a way that they're not just, you know, porting over content and doing a bad job and calling it done, you're good.
Sam, it seems almost too easy, right? I mean, there's a lot of teachers out there that are saying, I don't know how to do this. This is foreign to me. What advice do you have for any teacher that wants to learn about this stuff?
I would advise any teacher who looks at this and says, I don't know how to do that, that seems foreign to me, to repeat that exact same phrase, but with 10,000 times more enthusiasm. Because it's really what you have to do is you have to say, okay, we're going to do this coding thing, and I'm going to rely on my students to learn it as we go and to teach me how to do it. And we're going to look up stuff on YouTube, and we're going to figure this out. But what you're not going to be able to do is learn faster than the kids or stay ahead of the kids, right? So not knowing exactly how it works is okay, because there's a lot of ways to learn how. One of the first ways is actually on the code.org site. There's several different Scratch tutorials that will walk you through how to work with Scratch.
Now, one of the things that a teacher might want to learn how to do is to use coding to create assessments or pre-assessment programs. One of which I know you were talking about is to do Jeopardy games.
Right. I used to do a Jeopardy game that was based in PowerPoint. Did you ever use that Jeopardy game, Jeff?
I did, and I have some great tutorials on TeacherCast for anybody wanting to do that with Google Sites as well.
Right, so right. I did as well. I mean, it was just such a hands-on thing for kids.
Right, and Jeopardy's such a great trope, right? Because you can put a lot of closed-ended questions together. You can rank them. It can be a little competitive. It can be a little bit of fun. And, of course, people have created Jeopardy games inside of Scratch also. So just as I would, as a teacher, go in and create vocab Jeopardy and change all the answers and the questions and, you know, write my own clues and that kind of stuff, the kids can do that too. And if you've ever done this, if you can get kids excited enough to actually put a Jeopardy game together, the amount of time they spend going through that content in some degree of detail is really quite amazing.
Now, what does that look like? Because I know Scratch as you have the cat that walks up and down to block-based coding, but then you've got Jeopardy PowerPoint, which is the grids, and you have the numbers, and it looks like a Jeopardy board. How does block-based coding equal Jeopardy?
Well, what you can do is, I'm actually going to look inside of this program right now so I can see how they did it. So when you described Scratch, you said you've got the cat and kind of a background, right?
Right.
And that cat is what's known as a sprite. A sprite is a character or an object on the screen. Sprites can be characters like cats, but they can also be buttons.
Ooh.
And if you think of that Jeopardy grid as a stack of square buttons,
okay,
this author has built each one of those squares as their own character. So the $250 grid under the fourth one is called D250, and the third one is C250. So they built each of these, and when they have it so that when you click on one of the sprites, it's actually animated and it gets really big, just like it does on the show, and then it turns into the question.
Is this difficult, or is this a template? I mean, I know we're going to certainly put links to everything here in our show notes,
Now, what was that question again, Jeff?
Is this something that an average teacher can build, or do you have to be an MIT graduate to be able to build this in Scratch? I mean, obviously in our show notes,
building this from nothing would take some time.
Okay.
But if I was going to use this, I would not build it from nothing, because almost none of the work you do in Scratch, if it's complex at all, starts from nothing. You use other people's code. Right here on the right-hand side of the page, there's a button that says Remix. I click that. It gives me my own copy of this, just like I had my own copy of the PowerPoint Jeopardy game, and I have my own copy in Google Drive of the Google Slides Jeopardy game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that same kind of thing where you're taking the structure that somebody else has built and you're building your own content into it. Now, you could say, well, the kids would learn a lot more about coding if they built it all themselves. Well, yes, they would, but this is social studies class.
Rob, could you ever imagine putting something like this together? Or even if we take modern times, how could you bring this into your school district at, say, a department faculty meeting and say, hey, guys, I know this is a little out there, but try this whole Scratch program in your English class, in your social studies class, in your math class?
So I think I would start small. I would start in our library learning common, and I would find a way for our librarian to connect with the classroom teacher so that they can combine and do a project together. And it could be that they're doing, say, timeline for social studies in 4th grade. And then when they go to the library and it's their computer lesson, they can build that timeline as part of a connection to the class. Because I could see, at least from rolling this out, that it would be something that would take time. And it's the one thing that it doesn't stop. We have to keep moving. And so that's where I would start.
On your false momentum. Now, one of the great things about coding, and the reason that it's worth the time it takes, is because you actually allow it actually does slow the process down. It gives the students more thoughtful time on task and makes it harder for the students who are engaging superficially to rush through because of the novelty of the task. Obviously, if you make something like, if every time you do a lesson at the end of it, you have them crank out a new version of Jeopardy, it's going to get tiresome and irrelevant quickly. But I agree.
That's with anything.
Right. And I agree with what you were saying, Rob, where the way to really, if you want someone to take this on who's never done anything like this at all, and there's not a lot of it just kind of laying around in the school, then, really shepherding them through the process the first couple of times with some assistance can make a huge difference, because this is risky stuff. It might not work, right?
But that's the beauty of it, is that we're modeling learning for kids. But I do think that if I said to a teacher, hey, try this, I'd get some reservations. But if I said, hey, why don't you and our librarian connect and build on this project, I think that they would have more of they would be like, yeah, sure, that's a great idea. Let's give it a shot.
Right, because then not only is the prep split, but so is the risk. And I think that, we can all get on the bandwagon of, oh, everybody should this or everybody should that. But every time we try something new in our classroom, we're 9 times out of 10 setting aside something that has worked well enough in order to try something new that will hopefully work better or different. One of the reasons that I really advocate for using tools like coding and Scratch is because when I use them in my classroom, I see a different set of students experience success, and they can actually be helpful to their peers, right? These are not students that when we're all writing paragraphs, everyone's like, hey, Bob, come over and help me write this paragraph. But when they're coding, they're like, hey, Bob, why isn't this working? and Bob can come over and help them and get it fixed. And, Bob has a different social value in the classroom when we're coding than when we're not, because coding makes sense to Bob and he enjoys it. So, there's those kids in each of my classes. So, using coding as just one more kind of item on the menu of self-expression has been really transformational to me. And it's taken a long time to get to where I'm at. I mean, I've been using programming in my classroom for 6 years now, and I'm just getting to the point where I feel much more comfortable with it. But it is a risk, but it's worth it because the learning is different when you use coding.
Mm.
Sam, when it comes to these types of programs and these types of activities, I like to ask you this, but how young are we talking here? I mean, the one question I was looking at is everything that you just said clearly is teacher sets up ahead of time versus where the kids are going to be building a Jeopardy board, or the kids are going to be like teachers.
But even when the kids are going to be building a Jeopardy board, you really want to be giving them, like, I always give my students 3 or 4 Scratch programs. Like, there was a 4th grade project we did a couple years ago where, you ever play the game Oregon Trail, Jeff?
Yeah.
Right? Rob, Oregon Trail. You've died of dysentery, haven't you?
100 times.
We have dysentery right here. Oh, there's the 4-year-olds. Never mind.
No, never mind. I found a couple years ago an emulator for the old DOS version, like the OG green on black Oregon Trail. And I made my 4th graders play it. And they were just like, "Oh my God, this is awful," right? And that's when I realized that I'm the same age as Oregon Trail. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, this is so old and outdated." And I'm like, "Ow, ow, ow."
Is that the Oregon Trail or the game?
Ouch. I'm coming for you, youngin.
I know where you live.
I don't need to. You have triplets. You'll get yours.
4 years old.
But then I gave them several different versions of Oregon Trail that people had built in Scratch. And I asked them to create a game about the gold rush. So I gave them documents that they could essentially rebuild into a gold rush game. And that was really successful because I only wanted them to build a couple screens worth of the game, and they could shop through all of the examples of Oregon Trail and figure out which ones they wanted to replicate and how they were going to do that. But
so can I add to that there, Sam, for a sec? That to me is different because now they're obviously studying about the gold rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
In social studies. And now you're taking the idea of the Oregon Trail and you're asking them to create a unique product.
Right.
And that is, I think that is that whole creation when we're looking at, say, the rigor relevance framework, or we're looking at Bloom's taxonomy, creating is so high, it's the highest on the list. But it's also the idea that it's a relevant, unique product. And I think that the opportunity for other kids to be able to play that game,
right,
it is also something that is like, wow. And so your engagement level just goes through the roof.
Right, because they end up making a text that matters to their classmates.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal.
Sam, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, there's clearly a lot of good ideas that we can do with this. I mean, when we started to throw this topic around here, we threw this out there because I've been recently working with our social studies department, and I'm not running out of ideas at any length, but I'm going, well, what out of the traditional stuff can we get rid of and bring in some of these coding skills? I'm also working right now and trying to start a robotics club in our school district. Well, how do you start robotics? You can start with the robot people, or you can go look at the general population and start to bring robots to them, hoping then that they would join the robotics club. So, you and I have talked several times coding, where maybe the robot is on the European area and they have to code across the Atlantic City. Wow, around the Atlantic ocean.
That's a different activity.
That's what I'm
That's
gonna.
a
Yeah,
different kind of robot.
I'll be doing that one this weekend at the teachers convention. But okay, so they have to code their robot across the 7 seas to get to the new world, all right? And we can put obstacles in, like that is a coding program that you can bring into your social studies classrooms, or you could code dot and dash across your floor because they're doing westward expansion or something like that, right? So there's ways to bring that in.
In first grade, we would actually code the solar system, so the robot would have to navigate to the different planets of the solar system.
That's pretty neat,
right?
And a good podcasting topic. Now,
there you go.
What happens if a teacher wants to record a lesson or create a lesson or create a tutorial for that? Are there any good Chrome extensions that are out there that can be useful if a teacher has an example and wants to screencast themselves?
I know of one.
I found a few, but I want to recommend one here. What do you know, Sam?
Well, I hear a lot about Screencastify.
It's a very, very good one. And did I mention earlier on the show, it's free. We've been using Screencastify an awful lot in our school. Rob, have you used Screencastify?
Have not.
Thanks, Rob.
So we haven't. There's other things that we have used.
What are you using?
We've used Screencast-O-Matic.
Okay.
That was one that I've had teachers use for just creating quick. I had different grades teaching different subjects, so they made quick webinar type stuff.
Screencast-O-Matic is great. Screencastify is great. I saw a Chrome extension today called Loom, Loom. Sam, of course,
Does it make a sweater?
No. It's pretty good.
It makes a shirt though.
It makes a yes. It's not bad. I got to tell you that. Did I just?
Oh boy.
Did I just make? I think I just made Sam crack up on that one.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
just like a table. But there's a lot of great free Chrome extensions out there for anybody that wants to do, screencasting or videotaping themselves. We've been doing a lot of work with our kids of using Screencastify, but then actually using it on the front-facing camera, so the kids have to speak into it. We've been doing that rather than, take out your phone and record with things. Now, Sam, you know that over the summertime we released our first round of TeacherCast Best in Class Awards, and we had 2 that were out there. If you can speak a couple seconds about Camtasia, a great screencasting app.
I am a devout user of Camtasia for screencasting because I have found it solves one of the biggest problems I had as a teacher. What I found was when I wanted my kids to be doing all of this super inventive stuff, if I kept the directions for that super inventive stuff in my head, then they would just follow me around the classroom the whole time. And that was really hard to get work done. So I could use screencasting tools like Camtasia to record the thoughts in my head so that when I wanted them to know my thoughts, I could just have them watch the video and then they wouldn't follow me around.
And the other one that we were celebrating this summer was Telestream's ScreenFlow, another great app. And of course, you can find all the links to those things in our show notes. Sam, look, clearly there's a lot of great ways to bring coding into the social studies classroom, whether it be through Jeopardy games, other types of quizzes and assessments, or just really keeping your eye open and using what somebody else has used. There's no shame in acquiring a template and messing around with it. Sam, one more time.
Not only is there no shame in it, it's standard accepted practice in programming. You just give credit to the person that you're building off of.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. We, of course, want to thank our live audience over here on TeacherCast.tv.
Thank you.
We've had a large audience. Of course, we're broadcasting live to TeacherCast.tv. We're also broadcasting to YouTube, broadcasting to Facebook, Periscope.
My wife saw us on Facebook.
She just became my friend, Sam.
Oh, my goodness. I'm touched. It only took her out. Never mind. If you're watching, I still love you, hon.
Sam, where can we learn more information about the great stuff that you're laughing at right now? And
I'll be in the doghouse. No, you can find me at mypaperlessclassroom.com.
And Rob, where do we go to find more information about the things that you're doing?
Rob Pennington 9 on Twitter is the place to go.
And one more time, I want to say thank you guys. For those of you who are out there looking at what's going on in the world of TeacherCast. I'll also kind of open the book a little bit to celebrate 4 wonderful years of being an EduDaddy. We have decided, Sam and I, 4 years. We've decided to do a little housekeeping. TeacherCast right now is in the beginning stages of a brand new redesign. Working with a fantastic company. We're going to be a recast. There you go. So a lot more news coming out for that. Stick around. New logo, new design, new layout, new everything coming to you. Hopefully, we're going to be launching around the beginning of the school year. So, calendar year, I should say. So 2 months, hopefully, we'll be launching all of that stuff. So stick around. Keep a lot of good stuff there. Thank you guys for joining us. We're, of course, live here every single Tuesday night. On behalf of everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.